Have you ever heard someone call a baby sunny side up? It sounds pretty cute, right? But in the world of labor and delivery, it actually describes a specific and sometimes tricky situation. The technical term is occipit-posterior position, and in this explainer, we're going to dig into what that really means, why it happens, and how it can change the incredible journey of childbirth. First, we'll get a handle on what this position actually is, then we'll look at why it might happen in the first place. After that, we'll see how it can affect labor before we get to the really cool part, the amazing way most babies turn themselves around. And finally, we'll touch on those rare cases where that turn gets a little stuck. All right, let's dive right in. What does it actually mean for a baby to be sunny side up? Well, it all comes down to which way they're facing as they're getting ready to make their grand entrance. So check this out. On the left, you've got the ideal setup. This is called occiput anterior. The baby's face is toward the mother's spine, chin tucked, presenting the smallest part of their head. It's perfect. But on the right, that's our sunny side up baby in the occiput posterior position. Their face is looking up toward the mother's belly, and that changes the whole dynamic. So to get a little nerdy for a second, the occiput is just the fancy medical word for the back of the baby's skull. When that part is facing the mother's back, or posterior, you get the name occiput posterior. It's the exact opposite of that nice, tidy, chin-tucked position we're hoping for. So how often does this actually happen? Well, at the very beginning of labor, about 1 in every 10 babies is in this sunny side-up position. So it's not the most common way to start, but it's definitely not rare either. Okay, so we know what it is. The next big question is why? What makes a baby settle in this particular position? And the honest answer? For the most part, we don't really know. The official term is idiopathic, which is basically a doctor's way of saying it's a mystery. It just happens sometimes. However, even though most cases are a mystery, we have picked up on a few clues. There are certain things that seem to be associated with a baby being in this position more often. For instance, the unique shape of a mother's pelvis can sometimes make it a more comfy spot for the baby to settle this way. Other things can be the way the baby's head is tilted or if the placenta is on the front wall of the uterus. And interestingly enough, we do see it a bit more often with first-time moms. So we've got the what and a little bit of the why. Now for the really practical question. What does this actually mean for the labor process? How does this position change things? The main thing is that this position can sometimes lead to a longer, more challenging labor. In the first stage, the baby's head might have a harder time getting properly engaged in the pelvis. And then, in the second stage, things can slow down because the baby has a much, much bigger turn to make to get into the right position for birth. A really great way to picture this is the key and keyhole analogy. The baby's head is the key, and the mother's pelvis is the keyhole. In the occipit-posterior position, the key just isn't lined up right, so it takes a lot more wiggling and turning to find that perfect angle to unlock the door. But here's where this story gets absolutely amazing. Despite that tricky start, the vast majority of these babies pull off something incredible during labor. We call it the big turn. Now, if you take away just one number from this whole explainer, let it be this one, 80 to 90%. That is a huge, reassuring number. That's how many of these sunny side up babies will rotate all by themselves during labor and get into that perfect position. That's right, the natural forces of labor, the contractions, the shape of the pelvis, they all work together to guide the baby through this crucial rotation. They literally turn from facing up to facing down, getting themselves into that ideal position, ready for a normal delivery. The body is amazing. This incredible journey is called the long anterior rotation, and it's the favorable path we want to see. As you can see here, the process starts as the baby's head begins that turn, guided by the very shape of the birth canal. So here's how this incredible move happens. As labor progresses, the baby's head moves down and starts to rotate. We're talking a full 135-degree turn. That's 3/8 of a circle. It's a huge shift. And once they nail it, boom, they're in that ideal position, and labor can proceed as normal. It's a truly remarkable feat. But okay, what about that other 10 to 20%? It's important to understand what happens in those less common situations, where the baby's big turn doesn't quite get finished. If that turn stalls out, a few things can happen. Malrotation is when the head turns partway or maybe even the wrong way. Non-rotation is when it doesn't really turn at all. And both of these can lead to what's called an arrest of labor, which just means progress stops and some help is needed. Depending on how that turn stalls, the baby can get stuck in a few different positions. They might end up sideways deep in the pelvis or stay facing diagonally. In each of these cases, that key just can't find its way through the keyhole. And you can see in these other diagrams what those less favorable paths look like. An incomplete rotation can leave the baby's head in a sideways or transverse position. The journey basically just comes to a halt before the finish line. Now, when labor stops progressing and the baby can't finish that journey safely, the number one priority is, and always will be, a safe delivery. And this is when an intervention like a C-section becomes the safest and best way forward for both mom and baby. So let's just pull it all together. The big takeaway is this. For the huge majority, that 80 to 90% of sunny side up babies, their own incredible rotation will lead to a normal delivery. For that smaller group where the turn stalls, labor might stop, and a safe intervention makes sure there's a healthy outcome for everyone involved. When you really think about it, the main story here isn't about a challenging position. It's about the absolutely remarkable, almost magical ability of the human body to solve it.